Netflix just released A House of Dynamite, a nuclear disaster film with A-list talent, massive budget, and zero soul. It's a perfect example of how Hollywood killed the nuclear apocalypse movie and watered down a message that even the computer and war games got right. Let's talk about it. At first glance, A House of Dynamite sounds like it's straight out of the 1980s, with a few key differences. It's about a nuclear attack on America, but there's a lone nuclear missile rocketing toward a major city, not an all-out assault on strategic targets. It doesn't follow frightened families in fallout shelters struggling to survive. Instead, it's a high-stakes thriller focused on politicians and generals in bunkers arguing over who to blame and who to bomb. And let's not equivocate here. A nuclear attack absolutely could happen today. But would it happen like that? I won't go into all the issues with the attack depicted in the film. People far better qualified than me have critiqued Nuclear War, a Scenario, the book this movie is based on. But the screenwriter, Noah Oppenheim, claims it's meant as a call to attention and an invitation to a conversation. I'd ask, what conversation about nuclear war has zero mention of mutually assured destruction? The doctrine that tells us that any full-scale use of nuclear weapons by opposing sides will result in total annihilation, particularly if A, the characters in the narrative in the film implied that's the decision made, and B, we never see what happens. We're told some of us might survive the retaliation that will certainly trigger that scenario. Well, sure, survive the initial attack. No mention of surviving the nuclear winter either. The film ends before we can see the impact of the attack or the impact of the decisions the characters make. At the height of nuclear panic, films didn't fade to black when the bombs exploded. That was where the story began. In 1983, the TV movie The Day After traumatized 100 million Americans by showing Lawrence, Kansas erased by nuclear war. No heroes, no last-minute saves, just ordinary people consumed by horror. Within 2 years of watching it and writing in his diary that he was greatly depressed, Ronald Reagan began the negotiations that led to the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty in 1987. Then came Threads, the BBC's even grimmer version of total societal collapse. It terrified a 12-year-old Charlie Brooker so badly that he'd later terrify us with Black Mirror. These films weren't just entertainment. They were warnings that spurred citizens to action and changed policy. Then the formula shifted. 1996's Independence Day turned disaster into blockbuster spectacle. When the alien ship obliterates the White House, you aren't meant to feel the terror of anyone still inside. You're meant to cheer the visual audacity. Roland Emmerich had created a new formula. Destruction wasn't a consequence to be feared, but a thrilling set piece. The disaster movie became a roller coaster ride. And that brings us to today and the era of A House of Dynamite. While that film follows what is meant to be a realistic scenario, we can see the lack of weight or consequence in almost every modern disaster movie, from 2012 to Geostorm to Moonfall. The scale of destruction is planetary, but the emotional stakes are zero. Continents crack apart, oceans rise, the moon literally falls from the sky, and yet it all feels completely weightless. The modern narrative sidesteps the human cost. It focuses on military strategists, ticking clocks, and the furrowed brows of serious people in command centers, mostly men, keeping the audience totally disconnected from the actual horror of the event. And with most of these films, the audience can't be blamed in the least. The disaster is just a ridiculous, improbable plot device. But not so in A House of Dynamite, and that's why it matters. The movies that once terrified presidents into changing policy have been replaced by consequence-free entertainment that tells us what we already know. By sanitizing catastrophe, we've become dangerously numb. Films like The Day After showed that this could happen to your town, to your family. Today's films promise the opposite. World-ending threats solved by celebrities and last-minute heroics, or a black screen void without consequences or answers. We're left treating potential annihilation as just another distraction. something to watch while scrolling, like you might be doing right now. If you want more pop culture analysis your algorithm didn't prescribe, like this video and subscribe below. I had to go eat pizza and feed cats in the middle of this. Netflix didn't kill the nuclear disaster film alone, but A House of Dynamite is the final nail in its coffin. In its place, we have a hollow, spectacular ghost. We've traded unflinching realism that could change the world for CGI destruction that doesn't so much as change our minds. It barely makes us look up from our phones. And if all disaster films were just a fun time, if their subject matter didn't involve anything important or real, it would be one thing. But in a world facing very real threats, from climate change to renewed global conflicts, what have we lost by trading our nightmare realities for consequence-free tension? As I mentioned at the start, even the AI in 1983's War Games knew.
The only winning move is not to play. How about a nice game of chess?
And one last thing. I noticed something while I was editing this video. The Hollywood Reporter article where I got the Reagan quote mentioned that the director of The Day After pitched a reboot of the film to several streamers just 2 or 3 years ago, with an updated premise that showed the impact of a nuclear exchange worldwide, set in cities around the globe. What happened? The same thing that happened the first time The Day After was pitched. No one wanted to touch it. They all asked, who wants to watch a movie about nuclear war? Maybe that's why we have A House of Dynamite and not an updated version of The Day After. No one wants to watch a movie about nuclear war. We'll watch the first half of that movie, about all the serious discussions and decisions leading up to it. But we don't want to deal with the consequences of those decisions anymore.